Hello everyone, welcome back to the Sports Corner at Choose Adventure Media. My name is Zach, and in today's episode I'll be giving my mock draft 2.0. First of all, I want to say thank you guys so much for all the love and the comments that you guys gave me on my mock draft 1.0, and if you haven't already, go check that out. And then today's episode we'll be doing the mock draft 2.0. This is post-combine, this is post-free agency, and a little bit of trades, which helps shed a little bit more light on what we think these teams are going to do. So let's get into it. This is going to be my predictive mock 2.0 for the 2026 NFL Draft. All right, I've got my PFF mock draft simulator pulled up, and with the number one overall pick in the 2026 NFL Draft, no surprise here, the Las Vegas Raiders are going to select Fernando Mendoza, the Heisman winner, national championship winner, showed up 236 pounds at the combine, has great accuracy, obviously very smart, has great mobility, no surprise there. And at the number 2 pick, I have the New York Jets selecting Arvell Reese out of Ohio State. I think he's just extremely versatile. I like how athletic he is. I like that they could really put him on the edge. They can play him at off-ball linebacker. He said at the combine that he would rather play more on the edge, but for a team like the New York Jets that needs all the talent they can get on the defensive side of the ball, I think you should draft Arvell Reese and then figure out the rest of the gaps in your defense after that. Number 3 overall, I have the Arizona Cardinals selecting David Bailey. I could very well see this being an offensive line spot, maybe a Francis Maui-Noa. He is seemingly the top offensive line prospect in this year's draft. That's what I'm hearing. But I think with the Arizona Cardinals, they're kind of a lost franchise right now after having to cut Kyler Murray because he wanted to be traded and he wanted out. They signed a bunch of stopgap guys on the offensive side of the ball, Gardner Minshew, but with the NFC West and with the juggernauts that you have on the offensive side of the ball with San Francisco, and then obviously the LA Rams and the defending Super Bowl champions Seattle Seahawks, you need to give yourself a fighting chance on the defensive side of the ball, and they're not going to be a contender next year, so I think any pick on the offensive side of the ball would be a waste. I like David Bailey. He can create great pressure off the edge. He's developing as a run defender. As you can see, in 2025, he had a 21.6 pass rush win rate, which is great, and I think that's a great place to kind of rebuild this Arizona Cardinals defensive line. And at number 4 for the Tennessee Titans, before I say the pick, I just want to say this is a predictive mock. This is what I think these teams are going to do. This is not what I would do. But everything that I'm hearing is seeming to indicate that they are going to draft Jeremiah Love. I love Jeremiah Love. He's a great prospect. He moves phenomenally well. He's very explosive. And I think it's great to give Cam Ward another weapon to help support your number 1 pick from last year's draft and help build on the momentum from 2025. However, with Robert Saleh, the new head coach for the Tennessee Titans, and his defensive background, I probably would rather lean, a Sonny Styles or even a Ruben Bain Jr. And I get, Ruben Bain with the arm length, you're a little concerned. I think Robert Saleh could do a lot with Ruben Bain. I think he'd fit the system really well. Maybe even a Caleb Downs here, but maybe the injuries are scaring you off, but still Sonny Styles is a phenomenal option here. But from what I'm hearing from other analysts and what their free agency signings seem to indicate, it's seeming that they're going to go with Jeremiah Love, which is a great option here at number 4. At number 5, I have the New York Giants selecting Caleb Downs, the safety out of Ohio State. He's incredibly smart. He is extremely versatile. He can play a little bit of that free safety role. He can play down in the box and play more of a nickel. He can cover. And some teams are whispering about a degenerative ACL or something like that. I'm not too worried about it, and I think John Harbaugh is going to know exactly what to do with Caleb Downs, and we saw the success that he had with Kyle Hamilton and obviously the other safeties that he had in Baltimore, and I think John Harbaugh would want to recreate that. Again, I could also see this as being a Sonny Styles pick. I just think because they signed Tremaine Edmonds, they already kind of allocated some premium resources to linebacker, so that's why I think they may go Caleb Downs. But again, I'm not going to argue with you if you go if you go Sonny Styles here, but I decided to go Caleb Downs just with the Tremaine Edmonds signing. At number 6, I have the Cleveland Browns selecting Carnell Tate, the wide receiver out of Ohio State. I think of the wide receivers in this class, I just think he's really different. He can really do a lot. He's a great vertical threat. He's great after the catch. He's a big body receiver. And I think there's been a little bit of prospect fatigue with Carnell Tate that isn't really warranted. I think he absolutely has the potential to be a wide receiver 1 in the NFL. And I think he's absolutely warranted picking at the number 6 slot. The Cleveland Browns, they really need help on the offensive side of the ball. And I think he's the best wide receiver option. Again, if you want to go offensive line here, not going to argue with you. However, with the Titus Howard trade and some other signings that they've made, they've already invested a lot in the offensive line this offseason. And I don't really see the value in adding another one when your wide receiver core is as bad as Cleveland's. So love Carnell Tate to the Cleveland Browns, low moving cost, only having to go from Columbus to Cleveland. And at pick number 7, I have the Washington Commanders selecting Ruben Bain Jr., the edge out of Miami. I really like Ruben Bain, and even with the, particularly short arms, he just produces. And that's really hard for me to ignore whenever a guy just produces at the level that Ruben Bain does, and just how disruptive he is, and just how strong he is, and how strong he plays. He just knocks guys off the ball. And even at his size, 6'3", 270, and he's able to have a 23.5% pass rush win rate. That's just phenomenal, and I really like giving Dan Quinn a elite edge. I think he can be, and the Washington Commanders really need the help on the defensive line. At number 8, I have the New Orleans Saints selecting linebacker Sonny Styles. Usually I really like Mekhi Lemon here, but the New Orleans Saints, they really need help on the defensive side of the ball, and Sonny Styles is just a special talent. I think he's absolutely up there with Arvell Reese, but I think Sonny Styles leans a little bit more off-ball linebacker. I think you absolutely can play him at the edge position, but because he is more of an off-ball linebacker, I think that's going to slide him to 8. I don't see him getting past much further than this. I really like Sonny Styles. I think he's going to be a phenomenal linebacker for years to come. And I think he can kind of be that Demario Davis replacement that they've been missing now for a couple of years. At number 9, I have the Kansas City Chiefs selecting Mansour Delane, the cornerback out of LSU. Their secondary has taken a lot of losses this offseason, obviously trading away Trent McDuffie and Brian Cook leaving in free agency. So I think they might have seen that they think they can get Mansour Delane at 9, or maybe even a Jermod McCoy if that's more their cup of tea, or with the safety talent with Caleb Downs and Dylan Thieneman. And so I think they're doing, I'm going to say, a soft rebuild. Obviously, they're a great team, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Patrick Mahomes missing potentially a large portion of this upcoming season. So I like the idea, give them a young corner, and really just kind of start to retool that defense and kind of maybe reset the timeline a little bit. At number 10, I have the Cincinnati Bengals selecting Dylan Thieneman. To me, the Cincinnati Bengals need to draft whoever they think is the best defensive player left at this position. As you can see on the board, there's Dylan Thieneman and then Jermod McCoy. Don't like the idea of them drafting someone with the injury history of Jermod McCoy. He's great at playing down in the box, so if you want to play him at the nickel, he can do that. He's great in coverage. He can be more of a free safety. I think he really excels at the strong safety, and that's exactly what the Bengals need in their defense. And here at pick number 11, I have the Miami Dolphins going with Francis Maui-Noah, the tackle out of Miami. Again, low moving costs. He'll be in the exact same locker room as he's been in the last 3 years. Like I said earlier, what I'm hearing is Francis Maui-Noah is absolutely by far and above the number 1 offensive line in this year's draft. And I really like the idea of the Dolphins playing him at guard, and then if they lose one of their tackles in the next year or two, moving him over to tackle. And I know some people may make the argument that they already have 2 great tackles, so maybe go with more of a guard. But I just think with the talent of CC Maui-Noah on the board here, I think you draft him, you put him at guard, and then let him learn tackle at number 12. I know this is going to get some people going in the comments. I went with Keldrick Falk last draft, and that wasn't very popular. I have the Dallas Cowboys selecting Caleb Banks. So I know a lot of people are really cooling down on the defensive interior class. However, the Cowboys just traded away Osa Odigizua Most likely because they wanted someone bigger to play his role, and it doesn't really get bigger than Caleb Banks. What is he, 6'6"? 6'6", 330 pounds. Yes, you have the injury concern with him with the foot. However, the Dallas Cowboys have proven time and time again that if they like someone in the trenches, they're willing to draft them no matter where they're drafting. Maybe they go with CJ Allen. They really prioritize the trenches. Caleb Banks, best defensive interior player that fits their system. In my opinion, they pick him at 12, or maybe they trade down and still pick him. At number 13, I have the LA Rams selecting CJ Allen. And I know literally 10 seconds ago, I just said that drafting CJ Allen at 12 was too high, but drafting him at 13 is totally fine. The LA Rams have proven this offseason that they're in a win-now mentality, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to help their team next year win a Super Bowl. And of the options provided, maybe you go with Mekhi Lemon. I could absolutely see that. Maybe a Jordan Tyson at wide receiver. With everything that they've added to the defense, and again, like I said, the NFC West right now needs to be an arms race for the defense because of the freaky juggernauts that are on offense. So I think they draft linebacker, and that's kind of the last missing piece that they have in their defense. So I think they draft CJ Allen out of Georgia. At pick number 14, I have the Baltimore Ravens selecting Vega Ioane. He is honestly probably the best offensive lineman in this entire draft, but because he really is very solidly guard, I don't think he has any tackle flexibility. That's going to slide him down, but I really don't see him getting past 14, and his name's really hot. He's getting a lot of positive buzz. He's 6'4", 328, absolutely massive human being. And I think with the Baltimore Ravens, they need to get Lamar Jackson some help, and I think that starts with beefing up the offensive line, especially after losing Tyler Linderbaum in free agency. Vega Ioane is a great place to start with that. At number 15, again, this is I don't know if I agree with it pick, but everything I'm hearing is indicating this, is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I have them selecting Akeem Mesidor. They really need edge help. That much is proven. They we're one of the worst teams in the NFL generating pressure. And Akeem Mesidor, he absolutely does that. And I usually would like to go with Kenyon Sadiq because of their need at tight end, but what I'm hearing is that they prefer bigger guys that can block on the end of the line. Maybe they could be a CJ Allen if he didn't go at 13, but everything I'm hearing is that the Tampa Bay Bucks are really prioritizing edge with this number 15 spot. And I think Akeem Mesidor fits exactly what they need right now. And so that's why I have them drafting him here at 15. At number 16, I have the New York Jets selecting Mekhi Lemon, the wide receiver out of USC. I just love Mekhi Lemon, and I love how tough he is. I love how reliable he is. And after running a very solid 40 time at the Pro Day, I think it was somewhere in the around 4.5, which is totally fine. I don't know if you guys have seen, but there's some stat that like most of the Pro Bowl wide receivers are actually in the 4.5 range. And again, the New York Jets, right there with the Dolphins, are one of the worst rosters in the NFL. They just need talent. So that's why I have them taking Mekhi Lemon here at 16. At 17, I think the Detroit Lions sprint in the Spencer Fano card here. It's no secret, the Detroit Lions, they need help on that offensive line. I think they might have waited a year too late to start rebuilding that offensive line, just with the guys they have aging there. So Spencer Fano, I think you move Penei Sewell over to left tackle. I think you play Spencer Fano either at right tackle or at one of the guard spots, opposite of Keelan Rutledge, and help start rebuilding that offensive line in Detroit. At number 18, the Minnesota Vikings, I have them selecting Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. They really need safety help, and honestly, with their other needs, it's a little too high to draft. Maybe if Caleb Banks is here, maybe you draft him. This is it's pretty straightforward. They need safety. Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, best one on the board. Have him going to Minnesota. At number 19, I have the Carolina Panthers selecting Jordan Tyson. I'm hearing a lot of buzz that they're going wide receiver here at this spot to kind of complement Tedroy McMillan and Jalen Coker. I just think Jordan Tyson is just different from what they have currently, the wide receiver spot. And I said this in my mock draft 1.0, but I really like the idea of giving Bryce Young everything he needs to succeed for this upcoming year. So then after this year, whether or not he's your guy moving forward. I think Jordan Tyson's kind of a great intermediate guy. I think he can be explosive down the field if you need him. I think he can be a yards after catch guy. I just really like him as being their wide receiver 3. At number 20, I have the Dallas Cowboys selecting Avion Terrell. I had them going with Caleb Banks at number 12, and they continue beefing up the defense because that's their biggest need. Cowboys need corner, best corner on the board outside of Jermon McCoy. They drafted Savon Revel last year, and so kind of already drafted a guy with ACL / injury concerns, so that's why I don't like the idea of them going Jermon McCoy. I think they'll go Avion Terrell and fit great. He'll fit great in Dallas. At number 21, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers selecting Monroe Freeling. Monroe Freeling's a really interesting prospect. He's kind of seen a meteoric rise over the last couple of weeks. A lot of people are drafting him 6 to the Browns. I'm not that big on him. I think he's a great tackle option, but I think the 20s is more of his range. And from what I'm hearing, the Pittsburgh Steelers really want to move on from Broderick Jones. They don't have confidence in him. So I think they need to draft offensive line. They're in a weird flux as an organization. Like they have some explosive weapons in DK Metcalf and traded for Michael Pittman Jr., but don't really know what's going on at the quarterback position. And then they have a really old defense. So I kind of could see them trying to just draft any young talent onto that defense to kind of start to shuffle out some of the aging guys that they have there. But everything that I'm hearing is indicating the Steelers are going offensive line, and I think Monroe Freeling is a great option for them to do that. At number 22, I have the LA Chargers selecting Denzel Boston, the wide receiver out of Washington. I really like Denzel Boston. I don't know why he's not getting talked about more. He's kind of cooled off. I don't know if it's prospect fatigue, because again, a lot of people were on him in the offseason. He's 6'4", 209, and he is so great at separating at the top of his routes. And then he even gives you a little bit of a red zone threat down in the end zone. I love Denzel Boston, and I just think he, again, gives that wide receiver room something that they don't have with Quentin Johnson and Ladd McConkey. I could also see them going guard here. I really like Emmanuel Pregnon, so I could see him going there. I could see them going Chase Basantis. They could also get that later in the draft. I think there's some good interior offensive linemen down the board, so that's why I have them going with Denzel Boston here at 22. At 23, I have the Philadelphia Eagles selecting Kenyon Sadiq, tight end from Oregon. With the caveat that Kenyon Sadiq isn't a tight end, I think he's more of a wide receiver 3/4. I don't think A.J. Brown is long on the Eagles. I don't think he's going to be there for another year. So they signed Hollywood Brown in the offseason. But then after that, their current wide receiver 4 is Johnny Wilson or Quez Watkins. And for a Super Bowl contender, that's just not acceptable. I could also see them going tackle, but with Monroe Freeling just going off the board, maybe they like Blake Miller. Howie Roseman, he always falls in love with a draft prospect. I could very easily see the Eagles trading up to go get Kenyon Sadiq, or just whoever they fall in love with. Let's say they fall in love with Monroe Freeling, but Howie Roseman has proven to do untraditional things in the first round, and I think picking Kenyon Sadiq is a great option for that. Also, Dallas Goedert, I think they signed to only a 1-year extension, so they're going to need a tight end, and Kenyon Sadiq is just a freak, and I don't think he's being talked about enough. Especially since I'm hearing he interviewed really well at the Combine. I think he's going to go a lot higher than 23. I just don't know exactly where, but don't be surprised if Kenyon Sadiq goes higher than 23, maybe even as high as 14, 15, 16. At pick number 24, I have the Cleveland Browns going with Caden Proctor, tackle out of Alabama. Like I said earlier, the Cleveland Browns invested a lot of resources in free agency going after offensive linemen. And so I think that gives them the flexibility to wait until pick number 24 to get their offensive linemen. They got the best wide receiver they could at number 6, then go with Caden Proctor here at 24. Again, he's gotten a lot of unnecessary hate, I feel. He's a massive human being, and again, I think this means they probably play him at guard. I just like his flexibility more than the other guys. If the Cleveland Browns want to draft a tackle, I would go with Blake Miller here, but if they stick and pick, I really like the idea of them getting Caden Proctor here at 24. At number 25, this is probably my favorite prospect team pairing that I have, and I think the Chicago Bears would sprint in the card if they could. Caden McDonald, defensive tackle out of, or more of a nose tackle out of Ohio State, 6'3", 326, 91.2% run defense grade. Give some more help to that Chicago Bears defense that wasn't awesome last year. At number 26, I have the Buffalo Bills selecting Jacob Rodriguez, the linebacker out of Texas Tech. I know this is high. I know this is going to be pretty controversial, but I just think he's really what the Buffalo Bills need. They were aggressive on offense. They went and got DJ Moore from the Bears. They really need a linebacker, and Jacob Rodriguez is really good. He was extremely productive at Texas Tech, and I just think he'd fit in their system really well. So I have the Buffalo Bills selecting Jacob Rodriguez out of Texas Tech. At number 27, I have the San Francisco 49ers selecting Jermod McCoy out of Tennessee. This is going to be the end of his slide. Jermod McCoy is extremely talented, and the tape that we have from 2024 is really good. And like I've said a few times in this video already, because of his injuries, that's why he slides here to 27. With the 49ers, and in the last playoff game, Kyle Shanahan was yelling at Renardo Green, and the 49ers have really needed DB for a few drafts now, and I hate that they haven't prioritized it. So I think that they finally prioritize it again, especially with all the weapons that you have in the NFC West. They need to beef up that secondary, and I think that starts with Jermod McCoy. Hopefully the injuries don't plague him for his career, so I think he absolutely is worth a pick here at 27. Here at 28, I have the Houston Texans selecting Emmanuel Pregnon, the guard out of Oregon. Again, I can very easily see Emmanuel Pregnon going higher than this. He's just awesome. I obviously watched a lot of him at Oregon, 88.1% pass block grade. And the Houston Texans, they need to give CJ Stroud some more help, and that starts with Emmanuel Pregnon. At number 29, I think the Kansas City Chiefs are going to draft an edge here. Because I think he fits their system better, I'm going with TJ Parker. I could also see them going wide receiver. I just think that they maybe need a bigger body receiver, so I could also see them going Chris Bell. I would really like Chris Bell here. I would really like Chris Brazzell, but because I think they can get those guys later, that's why I have them going with TJ Parker, who obviously had a down year at Clemson, but coming into the year was projected to be a top 10 pick. I think he is a great replacement, and I think is the guy that they wanted when they drafted Felix Anudike-Uzomah out of Kansas State a couple of years ago. At pick number 30, I have the Miami Dolphins selecting Omar Cooper Jr. So I don't know if you guys have seen, but there was an interview done by NBC, and D'Angelo Pons, his teammate at Indiana, called Omar Cooper Jr. Devontae Adams with his release packages. And Omar Cooper Jr. is extremely versatile. He can really be a lot of things. 6 foot, 204, plays extremely tough, is great at blocking, great ball skills. But I just really like Omar Cooper Jr. and wanted to slot him here to the Miami Dolphins. At pick number 31, I have the New England Patriots selecting Keldrick Falk. They really need edge help, and after signing Elijah Vera Tucker, that to me was a sign that they're not going to draft an offensive tackle here. They're going to stick Will Campbell, their first round draft pick from last year, at tackle. So to me, Keldrick Falk very much feels like a Patriot. Great against the run, developing as a pass rusher, and I think that would fit great in New England. And with the final pick in the first round, I have the Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks selecting the edge out of Texas A&M, Cassius Howell. I think he's a great replacement for Boye Mafe. Body type, they're very similar, and they really need edge. They needed edge before they even lost Boye Mafe to the Bengals. So I think he'll fit in great with the Seattle Seahawks and is a great replacement there. All right, and with that, that concludes my mock draft 2.0. As always, would love to hear from you guys in the comments. What did I get right? What did I get wrong? What do you want to see your team draft? If you guys would like to see a 2-round mock draft, please let me know down in the comments. I would love to do one, but only want to do it if you guys are interested. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.